My name is Philippe Larochelle. So my name is Philippe Larochelle. I'm a lawyer in Montreal, Canada, and I'm helping GFFV, Justice for Formosa Victims, to help the victims of the Formosa environmental disaster. So I'm a lawyer for 20 years. I've been doing some international law, international criminal law, environmental class action, some human rights law, some native law, some civil law. So I have experience in all these matters. For me, the strategy is to give the victims a voice. And it was not possible in Vietnam because the people there that tried to raise the issue of the Formosa disaster were tortured or were imprisoned or were not allowed to have a day in court, and the Vietnamese government made things very difficult for them. So with GFFV, we came to Taiwan and we discussed with the lawyers here to explore the possibility of bringing a suit before the courts in Taiwan. And so we discussed it with them. There are, of course, obstacles because the disaster occurred in Vietnam, and the main responsible for the disaster is located in Taiwan. But so we spent a good deal of time with the lawyers here in Taipei, in Taiwan, to find a way to make the case receivable here before the courts in Taiwan. And in parallel to that, because some of the owner of the factory are based, one of the owner of the factory is based in the United States, the strategy also entails bringing a suit before the courts of New Jersey in America. Because the things were blocked in Vietnam, one of the aspects of the strategy was to prepare submissions on behalf of the victims before the United Nations, so before the Human Rights Council and before the United Nations as special rapporteurs, so experts on different issues. There is one on business and human rights, there is one on the right to health, there was one on environmental law. So what Formosa did in Vietnam is at the crossroad of all the mandates of these special reporters. So we also filed submissions to alert them of what is taking place there. Here people work in a different language. The victims speak Vietnamese. A lot of the people that are involved speak English. Here they speak Chinese. So it complicates things for sure to have to deal with the documents and suits and procedures and victims that with all the language barrier. So it's an extra challenge in this case for sure. The people, they are in Vietnam, so of course you have to look at what happened in Vietnam, and you cannot ignore the Vietnamese law because this is where the disaster occurred. Then the company Formosa, which is responsible for it, its headquarters are located in Taipei, in Taiwan. So that's another important facet of the file, which after discussing with the lawyers, it was realized that you are entitled to bring a suit here against Formosa because this is where they are located. Filing this suit here in Taipei was just the beginning of what will certainly be a long journey. There are many challenges. One you just pointed out, the issue of language. The other one is the difficulties for the victims to find their way before the courts in Taiwan. So thanks to the assistance of people in Vietnam, the victims have managed to give their name and to give their coordinates to to some people in Vietnam who transmitted these coordinates with the assistance of Justice for Formosa Victims to the lawyers here in Taiwan. So there is Vietnam being what it is, with the difficulties and the lack of liberty, to say the least, in that country, which basically prohibit the victims from obtaining justice there. So you have to basically go around these obstacles and make sure that they can be heard before the judge here in Taiwan. And I would say that is the main challenge, because normally if you are in a normal jurisdiction, then companies can be held liable for the pollution they cause. But because it's in Vietnam, you have this extra layer of difficulty, which makes it more difficult for the victims. And a consequence of that is that although the names of the 8,000 the name of 8,000 victims, and I want to stress that these are not all the victims. These are just those that managed to provide their names to the suit here in Taiwan. Because of that, the files for some of these victims need to be completed. There are some formalities in the Taiwan procedure which still need to be addressed. There is some evidence that still need to be collected, but we are confident, even with the obstacles that Vietnam is creating, we are confident that by having this suit, the case brought before the court, this will give it more impetus, and that the victims will have the chance to finalize the formalities to be formally part of the suit, but also to provide the lawyers here in Taiwan with the evidence of their losses and their prejudice, and the prejudice that they have suffered after this major disaster. And also another thing that's important is the case also has to deal with transparency. Formosa has apologized for it. Formosa has given money to the Vietnamese government, but everything is shrouded in a cloud of secrecy. So although we know that they admit that they are responsible, and that they apparently admit that they are responsible at least to the amount of $500 million, this is far from the end of the story, because we need to know, not only us, but everybody in the area needs to know what it is exactly, the pollutant that they that was thrown into the sea, how much of it, have they made any corrections so that now the situation is better? We simply do not know that. So part of the case is also about bringing truth and transparency to the victims about both the remedies that can be offered and the situation as we speak today. Is it safe today to eat the fish from the area? Is there still, are there acceptable levels of pollution, or is it still exceeding what is acceptable in terms of, to have safe food and a safe environment for the people that live in the area? I mean, those that can predict time frames before the courts, I think, are yet to be born. The time frame for now, from what I understand after speaking with the lawyers, is that within a couple of weeks, a judge will be appointed to the case. Within this time frame, we will not wait for the judge to be appointed, but we will continue to complete the record with the formal documents concerning the appointments of the lawyers. We will continue to gather the evidence regarding the damages that were suffered. But since the file has just been, since the suit has just been filed, in terms of time frame, it will be up to the judge, and he will have to arbitrate between the fact that this is a case that will be complicated because the evidence is very massive and comports many documents, and the fact also that there still remains difficulties to obtain the power of attorneys and the evidence regarding the damages that are claimed. This, I mean, for a lawyer to try to bring justice to thousands and thousands of people who are facing, sometimes, in my country, in Canada, there's no obstacles to go to court. Anybody can go to court, and they can have their day in court if something goes wrong, and the obstacles are not political like here. So for me, the challenge here is this political issue that we are. One of the main hurdles of the case is the fact that the complainants are not at liberty to express themselves and to sue in court. So the fact that we have managed, I mean, for me, it's a great victory, and it's a historical day, Tuesday, 2 days ago, when the voice of these victims for the first time was heard, and they were asking Formosa to account for what it did. For me, that in itself is already a great day. But I think it's just the beginning of the road, and that we will see far more important victories in terms of, I was just say, obtain for these victims proper compensation and also proper information, so that we can hopefully manage to reassure them, or maybe to have them more worried if we finally manage to see the figures and the statistics of what pollution Formosa is still rejecting in the sea today. This is a case that's very important because this is a case which is fought, although the case is against Formosa, the case is, in a way, the main obstacle is not Formosa, but it's Vietnam, and it's the oppressive policies of Vietnam. So because we are in a court where they have no control, it will be interesting to see how a judge will react. I think it's a great opportunity for the Vietnamese community to test and to use foreign courts to see, to go against the impunity with which the Vietnam government has been oppressing the victims of Formosa. They cannot come here in Taiwan and buy the judge or prohibit the victims from having their day in court. Their names are known, they have their day in court, and Formosa will have to account for what it did. Even if it gave money to the Vietnamese government, the fact that a judge will be seized of the case and will be heard a case which has a very strong human rights component because of the dangers the victims are facing, I think presents the Vietnamese community with a great opportunity to also trigger some changes in Vietnam. As I say, it will be beneficial for, it is a test case and it is very important to make it, to make it through.